Jay Windley claims that Bart Sibrel lured Buzz Aldrin to the motel, pretending to represent a Japanese TV company. Is this true?
I don't know, and I couldn't care less. I'm interested in the Apollo missions and those people who say they never happened. And I don't worship Jay Windley. I don't follow Jay Windley. I don't even think I've communicated with him more than twice. In fact, I didn't even know his name until I saw it in one of your video screeds.
Sibrel had stated that he met up with Aldrin after the former astronaut had given an interview to a Japanese production company. A statement that is in agreement to what Space.com told us shortly after the assault. But Jay Windley tells us a different version of events. On the Internet Movie Database forum, Windley wrote,
Bart Sibrel posed as a Japanese film crew to solicit an interview with Aldrin under false pretenses. Sibrel had been stalking astronauts for years, so many of them knew who he was, and would not grant him interviews directly. According to documents I viewed from the LA prosecutor's office, Sibrel told them his intent was to conduct an ambush interview with Aldrin in which he planned to accuse Aldrin of dishonestly taking the honorarium for the interview and then catching his reaction on camera.
Aldrin, on the other hand, in his new book, Magnificent Desolation, claims he did indeed give an interview to a Japanese production company and merely bumped into Sibrel on his way out. Is Aldrin lying?
I have no reason to believe he was lying. I can't think of any reason why he would. Can you? When you read one of these books, why don't you do it for some reason other than just trying to find some way that the author may be contradicting someone else?
As part of the 40th anniversary of the moon landing, Aldrin released a new book entitled Magnificent Desolation. In a chapter called A Blow Heard Round the World, Aldrin discusses the incident in vivid detail. Everyone who believes Windley's side of the story needs to hear this. Because of the publicity the hoax theorists have garnered, occasionally, even in a serious interview, a reporter will broach the subject. One September morning in 2002, I was in Beverly Hills at Lux Hotel, filming a television interview for a Far Eastern TV network, when the interviewer began going in a direction that I knew was out of bounds. At first, I tried to be cordial, adroitly answering the question, assuming that the interviewer would recognize my reluctance to talk about inanity and bring the focus back to a bona fide space subject. Instead, the interviewer began playing a television segment that had aired in the United States on the subject of hoaxes, including a section suggesting the Apollo 11 moon landing never happened. I was aware of the piece and had been livid when it originally aired. I did not appreciate the interviewer's attempts to lure me into commenting on it. Lisa had accompanied me to the interview following her early morning triathlon training in the Santa Monica Bay, and she immediately recognized that this was a flagrant violation of our willingness to conduct the interview in good faith, so she called a halt to the production. We weren't belligerent, but we did not linger over our goodbyes either. We left the hotel room and walked down the hall to catch the elevator, only a matter of seconds away. I pressed the button for ground level, and Lisa and I looked at each other and smiled. It had been a strange morning already. When the elevator doors opened on the ground level, it got worse. As we stepped out of the hotel foyer, a large man who looked to be in his mid-30s approached me, attempting to engage me in conversation. "Hey Buzz, how are you?" He had his own film crew along, with the camera already rolling to document the encounter. I greeted him briefly, acknowledging his presence, and kept moving. Standard procedure for life in Hollywood. As Lisa and I walked through the foyer towards the front door of the hotel, however, the man kept getting in my way, peppering me with questions, none of which I answered. Lisa took my arm and glared at the man. "That's enough," she said, as I could feel her pressure on my arm, guiding me towards the door. "Please let us alone. We're leaving now." We stepped outside under the hotel awning, and the film crew continued right along with us. Lisa's car was parked across the street on Rodeo Drive, but there was no crosswalk nearby, and the traffic was brisk. Meanwhile, the interviewer had taken out a very large Bible and was shaking it in my face, his voice becoming more animated. "Will you swear on this Bible that you really walked on the moon?" I looked back at the man and gave him a look as if to say, "Will you swear on that Bible that you are an idiot?" The man was becoming more virulent, inflammatory, and personally accusatory in his outbursts. I tried not to pay any attention, but he was saying things like, "Your life is a complete lie, and here you are making money by giving interviews about things you never did." Lisa approached the cameraman and insisted, "Please turn off that camera. We're trying to get across the street to our car." I'm a patient man, but this situation was silly. "You conspiracy people don't know what you're talking about," I said. Lisa spied a break in the traffic, so she grabbed me by the arm again and said, "Buzz, let's go." We started walking across the street, but the large man kept getting right in front of us, standing in the middle of Rodeo Drive, blocking our path as his cameraman kept rolling film. Lisa seemed nervous about trying to go around him, while searching for her keys to unlock the car with the man in such close proximity, so we turned around and walked back to the bellman station outside the hotel. "Okay, this is ridiculous," I said to Lisa and the bellman. "Call the police. This guy is not letting us get to our car." I was under the awning, and Lisa turned away from me to approach the cameraman again. "Please turn that camera off," she said. Meanwhile, the large man was nearly screaming at me. "You're a coward, Buzz Aldrin. You're a liar. You're a thief." Maybe it was the West Point cadet in me, or perhaps it was just the Air Force fighter pilot. Or maybe I just had enough of his belligerent character assassination. But whatever it was, as the man continued to excoriate me, I suddenly let loose a right hook that would have made George Foreman proud. Whap! I belted the guy squarely in the jaw. Aldrin never mentions this individual by name, but I doubt we need to second guess who he is talking about. While I feel that some parts of his story, like the busy traffic, are exaggerated, it's important to note that Aldrin states that before his encounter with Sabrell, he had just given an interview to a Far Eastern TV network. Aldrin's story is exactly the same as what Sabrell told us, that Aldrin had just given an interview to a Japanese TV company, and he, Sabrell, encountered him afterwards. You'd think that if Sabrell lured Aldrin to the motel, pretending to be a Japanese company, as Windley claimed, Aldrin would have openly wrote about that in a heartbeat. And yet, he said exactly the same thing as Sabrell. So, thank you, Buzz. Thank you for proving conclusively and definitively that your #1 defender of your moon landing claims, Jay Windley, is a pathological liar who will pull whatever he can out of the air in order to libel conspiracy theorists. Jay Windley and Robert Braenig claim that major solar flares can be predicted before they occur and thus postpone a moon flight to a safe date. Do you believe that?
I don't know, but if they can, good for them. I would probably care more about this if I was going to be an astronaut one day.
So, you don't know. Fair enough. Newsflash for you, they can't predict them. Even to this day, the ability to accurately predict when a solar flare will spurt up does not exist. You state you would only worry about this if you were going to be an astronaut someday. Yet 24 people claim to have been to the moon, and would most certainly have had to worry about this. So tell me, why would, as you put it,
prominent and highly qualified Apollo defenders
claim that NASA had the ability to predict major solar flares before they occur, when even today, we still don't have that kind of technology? Yet Phil Plait and NOAA's John McKinnon both claim that major solar flares are not predictable. Do you believe that?
If you have faithfully represented the views of the people in these two questions, then I would say that they probably all believe what they claim, and it appears that they disagree. Am I bruised yet?
Ah, the penny drops. Yes, they obviously do disagree with Brannig and Windley's claims of predictability. I find it interesting how you won't say whether or not what these individuals say is factual, rather, you say that they believe what they say is true. Just so that there is no doubt that I am indeed accurately representing the views of these individuals, let's see what they wrote. Phil Plait wrote, "In a sense, the astronauts were indeed risking their lives to go to the moon, because solar flares are not predictable." And I showed John McKinnon's paper prominently in my 23-part series on space radiation. He not only claimed you cannot predict this stuff, as a member of NOAA, he had historical proof that you can't. I'm sure you're familiar with the major solar flares that occurred in August 1972. The sunspot that these flares in question came from was known as Region 331. On page 28, McKinnon wrote, "The activity from Region 331 was not covered in any long-range forecasts." He showed the weather forecasts which clearly state that only low solar activity was predicted for August 2nd, 1972. Think about that. Windley and Brannig claim these guys had the ability to predict major solar flares in advance and could move moon flights to a safe date, and yet their predictions missed the Godzillas of all solar flares? Now answer the obvious. Is it or is it not possible to predict life-threatening solar flares in advance before sending people to the moon?